Start.
Okay,
Oh,
now
there we are. That's like starting now.
here we go. For the third time.
It's
Hello,
just creating
everybody.
it. No,
To
no,
the
it's
Abba
still
calling
creating it.
Hangout. Okay, it's different. Welcome to the Abba calling Hangout, everybody together. And I've got my dear friend John MacDonald with me here today, from all the way from Scotland. And my phone's just ringing, but Charlie is going to join us in a moment. So here we go. And so we're just jumping in. So we want to talk today about the tree of life and ministering from the tree of life. Last time we talked about those of you who joined us. And at the end, I first want to start the conversation with John. And if you want to, at the end, jump in, feel free to jump in. And Charlie's joining us. And
there he is.
Hey there.
Hey there.
Hey, great to see you.
Well, good to see you. I was having some kind of technical difficulty getting in, but I made it.
Yeah, us too. We actually started 4 times before we got in. So don't worry. No, so I was just starting to say that actually, welcoming John, and also that you're going to talk about the tree of life today and ministering from the tree of life, because last time we talked about how we can get into this thing of seeing what's wrong with people and telling them what's right rather than actually ministering life to them. And that a lot of what sometimes happens in the prophetic, when we talk about listening to Abba and so on, is that actually we're not listening to Abba, but we're eating from the poisonous fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and we're starting to judge people and try to tell them what they're doing wrong and what they're supposed to do right in our opinion and so on, rather than actually ministering Abba's love and life to them.
Right.
Good. So, and as I said before, we're gonna start the conversation, and later on, if anyone wants to jump in, they can jump in. And we usually have these conversations for half an hour, 40 minutes. And if you want prayer at the end, we're offering to listen to you, to our for you, to our, and also pray for you. And good. That was my introduction. John, do you want to start off, or? No, actually,
not really.
I don't know.
You called this, so
Yeah. No, actually, Charlie, you might not know that, but John, you met Charlie and Paula in at your Bible school, isn't it?
a long time ago, 1990, 91, something like that.
Really?
You came to England. Yeah, you and Paula performed isn't, you ministered with the keyboard and all that at the Elam Bible School in Nantwich in England.
Oh, was it Paul Sinclair that got us in there?
It may have been. Paul passed away recently.
That has been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away a couple.
I seem to remember
Paul passed
being
away a couple of years ago.
Yeah, the Elam Bible School. Yeah, ministering one time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's been a good while, but yes.
So that's a long time ago, Charlie. Yeah. I was a student then.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
And you.
I feel so old, but I guess I should, because I'm 75 now, just a few days away.
I'm just a youngster. I'm only 60.
Oh well, just a kid. Well, yeah, I'm glad to get to meet you. This blesses me to hear all this, that we've connected at some point in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. What y'all were talking about? Huh?
Sorry. No, I just wanted to say, and you both were still very faithful Pentecostals rather than heretics, is it?
Oh, well.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say this: I was not a hell preacher. I mean, he can confirm this. At least I don't think we ever preached about hell or even mentioned it. You can do that, by the way. In the Elam and the Assembly of God and all that. Just don't say that that it will be emptied, or that hell doesn't appear in the original language of the scripture or something like that, then you're going to get in a lot of trouble. But as long as, but if you don't mention it, that's fine. Most of them don't want to mention it either.
That's true.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we really blew people away. A lot of the leaders that had us said, you know, Charles is always picking people out of the audience that, as far as we know, they're not even Christians. And he's telling them about their gifts, and they start to cry and weep, and how that God is proud of them for what they've done for this person and that. And, you know, and sure enough, at the end,
That's
they
awesome.
get Charlie doesn't even know that he's talking to non-Christians. He's talking to them as if they are, you know. And so that was already stirring inside of me, and I didn't know what it was. You know, I did. You know.
But isn't that how the Lord speaks to them?
Huh?
Isn't that
So,
how the Lord speaks to them, though? As though they are?
oh, absolutely. Yes. He always says son or daughter or child, or, you
Yeah.
know, his kids, you know. We're just the firstborn group. We should be kind of like those that, you know, if you're the firstborn, you usually get to do the babysitting, right? You're the first one that goes out and makes a living, you know, and maybe you'll have enough income to help the poor ones so long as time goes on, or whatever, you know. That's the purpose of the firstborn. It's not to be the only born; it's to be the firstborn. You know.
Good point. Yeah.
But yeah, what you were saying a while ago really struck me about ministering life. I would tell people this, you know, very soon on, we decided we didn't want to seem like gurus. We wanted other people to taste and see that the Lord is good, and that they too can hear God, because all of us are given that capacity. And so we would get people moving with us in prophecy a whole lot. We drag the pastor out there with us, or associates, or and other people in the audience, you know, rove with the microphone and have them pray over people with us and all that sort of thing. But I would tell them this, I'd say, if you see things that are wrong in people, maybe they're on drugs, or they're living with someone they shouldn't, or this or the other, that's not something you should be mentioning. What you should be doing is saying, Father, where is the pain behind all of this that is this thing about? And address the pain, address the woundings in the past in compassionate ways, and only make mention of the things that are good, you know. And God is trusting you. We are stewards over His secrets, over His mysteries, you know. So that's the way I was teaching people, you know, back in those days. We're not
That's
called
good, Charlie.
to expose people publicly for their errors, or even privately, really, you know. Uh, you know, there may be a very exceptional instance once in a while where, if you're very seasoned in the Lord and you have won the right to speak into a person's life over a period of time of really investing in their life, knowing them crying on your shoulder, you crying on their shoulder, etc. You can just say, there may be instances where you will come and address something and say, in all humility and meekness, and say, I can be wrong about this. Please forgive me if I am, you know, and bring something out. But if you haven't won the right, if you don't know this person, you know, you always just address the pain behind it. So that's the kind of way that I like the way you're talking about.
That's good.
That's ministering out of the tree of life, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, it's one of the things I was thinking about, Charlie. You know, we don't know what the fruits were in the garden of the different trees,
Right.
but I mean, what you're describing is treating people with love,
Yeah.
essentially, and I think that's the fruit of that tree of life.
Right.
The fruit is love. You know, and if God is love and Christ is the exact representation of Him, then living in Christ is to eat of that fruit, to eat of love.
Yeah,
Well, and
absolutely.
to put it in
It's
simplistic terms, you poop out what you eat.
Well, I remember picking out a girl that was sitting next to her grandmother. I knew it was her grandmother. I don't know why I did, but because it could have been an elderly woman sitting next to her that she didn't even know. But I began to talk, but I saw that she was a problem child, that she was like 16, 17 years old, and the grandmother was just very disturbed about her habits and her behavior, and scared for the child, you know. So I just picked her out, and the Lord just showed me all that, but He also showed me that when she was 4 years old, her parents divorced and decided to give her to her grandmother, you know. And but I said, instead of that, I just said, you felt very abandoned when you were 4 years old, and you still have memories of that, and you love your grandmother. And she just began to cry, you just begin to weep, you know. And I said, out of that abandonment, you have always had a tendency to be like the puppy dog that always wants to find a lap to sit in, because you're just have been so insecure and so feeling so unloved. And sometimes people put you in their lap, and then they've really knocked you around and been mean to you. And she's profound, you know, she was weeping profusely, and no one else knew what the metaphors were, you know, that were being talked about. But I sensed that it was talking about the guys that she was, you know, hooking up with and stuff like this, you know. But I never said anything like that. I didn't even get close to that, you know. I said, you've been reaching out for love and not finding it, but in the wrong places, and it's just really been a hard time for you, especially in the last 2 years. But God wants you to know that you are being shaped and molded by Him, and you will have a very compassionate ministry in the days to come, in the years to come, for people who have had that sense of abandonment like you did, and people who have so much wanted to have a stable life, but haven't been able to find it emotionally. You're going to be a wonderful counselor, grief counselor, and healing light of God to many people in the days ahead, and that sort of thing, you know. And I just said, the last thing I said is, your grandmother is not your enemy. She just remembers a lot of her own mistakes, and she doesn't want you to make them. And before it was over, they were weeping in each other's arms and reconciling and everything. You know, it was just gorgeous what God was doing. But I thought, wow, boy, you took me through a tough one, didn't you, Father? You know. But I think that's what God wants, you know. So He wants us to come to heal, not to open the wound and, you know, let some more blood. That's just my strong sense about it. We come to heal, haven't we? Jesus came to heal the broken heart. A bruised reed He will not break, right?
Yeah. And it's also what you mentioned in this is this whole thing. We can only pass on what we've received, you know. And so when we give this love, this life ministers to others, it produces life and love in them. And if we pass out judgment and condemnation, then that's what we will produce in their life, you know. It's the fruit. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think there's a difference in ministering love and doing loving things.
Oh yeah.
I think that they're two completely different things, you know. And I think a lot of us, certainly I know in the past I've done it, and I'm sure I'll make the mistake in the future at some point, but made the mistake of trying to do something because we know it's loving, rather than because we're ministering out of a place of love. And it's something I've become very conscious of over the last few years, of the need to be living in love, eating that fruit, you know, feeding off Christ and the fruit of love that He produces, and living out of that, the sustenance, the nourishment, the nurturing that love brings me, so that I'm ministering out of that place rather than just out of the knowledge that I've gained. Because it's easy to look at the Bible and get principles.
Yes.
And
yes.
these are the principles that we do, or we live by, or we minister by. But actually, Jesus only ever did what he saw his Father doing. That was his only principle. And because he lived in the place of being loved by him.
Yeah. People sometimes get the prophetic ministry confused with knowing eschatology. Thinking we know eschatology. But that is the doctrine of the last things for anyone that doesn't understand these words, which I don't understand many of them. Yeah.
I think, and one of the problems I came up against when I was younger and just beginning to discover prophecy, I thought we were all meant, those of us who prophesied were all meant to be like Nathan, and being completely the opposite of love, where you people get shamed publicly or embarrassed publicly, or and I'm horrified when I think of some of the stupid things I've said that perhaps were true but shouldn't have been said.
Right.
And it took me time to realize, growing in love teaching me that some things just because that's background knowledge for you as you speak into someone, not something to be revealed. And I think that's again back to that feeding on Christ and the love that comes out of that, teaches us these truths rather than necessarily learning principles or trying to study the Bible to get the word or the knowledge. Right.
Yeah. Revelation isn't always just information. It isn't just information. It's what God is saying right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't it even? I think it's a book of Revelation where it says that the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus, or something like that, isn't it?
Revelation.
Yeah. So, and very often, a lot of what goes as prophecy these days, it just sometimes shows so much from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And what you two guys are saying is basically that, first of all, the prophetic is first of all our intimate relationship with our Father, with our Abba, and that actually true prophetic ministry flows from that relationship, and it flows from this place of ourselves knowing that we're loved and experientially knowing, and then from there, and then when we speak, then it's not just about elections and all this kind of stuff, but it's actually the prophetic carries the very substance of love itself.
Yes.
And we speak actually basically into this original sonship in humans, like what you both shared, that you spoke to unbelievers and who did not yet believe they're loved, and they did not believe the gospel, but it's like something comes awake in them because we impart that love of Abba to them, and by speaking it into them. And I think
that's the thing about. Sorry, on you go.
No, I'm thinking in general with preaching. Also when you think about when you look at the apostles in the Bible, the authority they carried was not that they tried to get people to do something, but that they declared the truth. They proclaimed something. It's like a friend of ours said, John. It's like when God said to him, "Don't tell people what they have to do. Tell them who I am and what I've done for them."
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think my perception of ministry now can't be separated from living in love.
Yeah.
If you separate the two, you're heading for disaster, and you're going to ruin not just your own life but other people's lives. Yes. When there's, Paul calls it having love. Yes. Like containing love, embracing love, and the whole purpose is to call out people's true identity as sons and daughters.
Yes.
I think that's the purpose of it, of all ministry, regardless
Yeah.
of whether you call it evangelistic or prophetic or teaching or pastoral. Or it's about calling out identity.
Yes.
You know, it's not about building something other than that person.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's important, this ministering from the tree of life, eating from the tree of life, living in love, because the end result is the unveiling, the revealing of the sons of God.
Yes.
Paul says the whole earth is groaning for that. You know, and Mark uses that word creation. I used to think it was just the grass and the trees and the flowers, but Mark uses that same word in his gospel about the unbelievers. You know, so Paul is saying everything in creation, human, flora, fauna, it's all groaning, awaiting the revealing of the sons of God. And the sons of God are those who know themselves loved by God.
Right.
And so the ministry then, as Paul says, it's a ministry of reconciliation that God has given him. And I think it's the ministry he's given us all, is to reconcile sons and daughters back to their true father.
Right.
For me, that's the importance of eating from the tree of life and ministering from that perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can all go home now. No, I'm teasing.
You sorted it, John.
Nathaniel, I saw you under the fig tree. You know, don't you know that? Wow, don't you? He was unraveled because he truly had been under a fig tree, probably calling out to God. You know,
Yeah.
and he says, I saw you when you were standing under the fig tree. Just a very small thing, he said, but probably a real life changer. You know, amazing. You know, there's just, you don't have to say a whole lot, really, do you? You know.
And then
Wow.
he spoke into his identity and saying, "He is a true Israelite without
True
any
Israel, a true son of Israel." Yeah.
So he got his attention. You are known by God, and then he's spoken to his identity. And I think a lot of people have experienced the prophetic, like being called out or something, and in a healthy and loving way, they will say what mostly touched them was the feeling that they were known by God, that it mattered. It wasn't about the secrets in that sense, you know, getting some information, like you said, Charlie, but that God knew the intimate details of their lives, their dreams, their hopes, what they've been through, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way the secrets of their heart are revealed. It's not the secret sins or the things they hope never get made again. You know, that's not what it's talking about. You know, God's not up to shaming people. Yeah.
But you see that with Zacchaeus, don't you? Jesus never mentions the fact that he's a tax collector or that he's hated by everyone else. He doesn't mention any of that. He just goes and has fellowship with them. And something happens to Zacchaeus when he's in that atmosphere where he's like, he just suddenly exclaims, you know what? Everything I've cheated people from, I'm giving them back 4 times. I mean, people there must have been like, what's going on? What just happened there? Because Jesus is just eating and drinking.
Right. Just being him.
Yeah, there's no sermon, there's no...
Yeah.
You know, he has that direct connection to love, and it just seems to flow through him. To such an extent that he doesn't have to say anything, because love brings its own conviction.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? When we talk about quote unquote prophetic, the prophetic can also be action. You know, it doesn't have to be speaking. And obviously there are other ministries. Sometimes also in the Bible, when Paul talks about the ministry of helps and things like that, a lot of people think, what's that? You know, that's not as exciting as being an apostle. But that's where, you know, if that's your gift, I think it's you, Charlie, who always gives this example. A guy who always is the one who finds the people on the road to repair their cars. You know, always finds the person with the flat tire. You know, it's their ministry gift where love flows through and something happens. and some of these people think they don't hear from God. That's the sad thing. But it's he's
No,
always
that should we store, and we can be running close financially, but she'll say, well, this little thing here, I think Marsha would love this. I'm going to get this from Marsha. Well, that's our neighbor and now a dear friend. But she just thinks of things like that. It just normally comes to her. I wish it did more to me. I mean, I love to give. Don't get me wrong, but this is a gift with her. She knows exactly what would fit the right person. Would be the
My wife's the same, Charlie.
Is she? Yeah. It's amazing that's
She just knows when to drop someone a message or when to send them a little card or a little gift of some sort, and people always come back to and say, how did you know?
Yeah. Just something very almost insignificant to a lot of people, but not necessarily to the person receiving it. That's that powerful. That's prophecy in action, though, isn't it? I mean, it's the prophetic lifestyle happening.
But then you can't see that. What would be insignificant, because it could be insignificant to Paula, but she's connected to love, and love has enlightened the eyes of her heart, if you like, that she sees that person, she sees their heart, she sees their need that they might not even be aware of at the time, but love in her, love flowing through her, just allows her to see what God is seeing in that moment. And she's able to hear love saying, Paula, that's for Marsha. And she'll turn to you and say, Charlie, I think Marsha would love that. And you're going through your pockets going, wait a minute.
But isn't that what Paul talks about when he says, we all have different gifts, and he said, and desire these gifts, but I show you a better way, an even better way. Pursue love. Love is the kind, and love is all these things, and how actually all these things are just an expression of His love, and we are called to grow in that love by receiving that love, living in love, like you said, John, living in that love, and being a manifestation of that love. So that we can say one day as well, when you've seen me, you've seen my Father, and like Paul even said it, he said, it's no longer I who live, it's Christ who lives in me, and the life I live now, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who trusted in His Abba, and
right.
One of the things I've noticed as I've been living in this and trying to feed on love, if you like, is realizing how inclusive love is. I think ministering out of that place, ministering out of the tree of life, there's an inclusiveness rather than an exclusionary aspect or discriminatory aspect. It's like, I don't care if you've been a prostitute, a murderer, or do you know what I mean? Because love doesn't discriminate like that. When you read Paul writing in Corinthians, he's describing the Father when he says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not keep a record of wrongs, it's not rude, it's not easily angered. He's speaking about Abba. Abba is patient, Abba is kind, Abba keeps no record of wrongs. And so if he's not keeping a record of any wrongs, there's nothing that can exclude you from love.
Right.
So if we're living in that place of love, if we're ministering out of that place of the tree of life, where the fruit is love, then we will be inclusive. And we will be harangued for it by elements of Christendom. Because they can't see that love is inclusive.
Right.
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 And even in correction, the Lord corrects me, and it takes me a moment to realize I've just been corrected.
I know. Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's no big rebuke or anger. It's just like, really, John? You go, yeah. Oh, no. Sorry. Yeah, you're right, Lord. No. Not really.
Absolutely. No. Do you hear yourself? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does it. He's often very funny with me. He it's like he cracks a joke, or echoes something back to me. One time I did and say, "Oh Lord, Lord, Lord," and I distinctly heard, "What, Charles, Charles, Charles?"
I remember once, Charlie, I was driving, and I was in a 60 zone, and this guy's driving at 30, and I was going to an appointment, and I was getting so frustrated. I was like, "Lord, you know what it's like. You just get so frustrated. You know what it's like." And it's clear as anything just said to me, "No, John, I don't. Tell me." And I was like, "Okay, Lord, sorry, I should know better. You're right." But just that, "No, I don't, John. Tell me."
Yeah.
He is so down to earth.
Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, I always. Yeah. Say. You go ahead. You go ahead.
I think one of the things we need to deal with, the people who are criticizing us for ministering that much grace themselves are constantly shackled to shame and a sense of alienation because they cannot realize that he is not counting their sins against them. Because religion is telling them that their sins are separating them from God. They're going back to the Old Testament as the foundational revelation when it is not. It's the beginning of light, but the true light is Christ himself and all that comes from him. And so people who keep grounding things in the Old Testament, things that sound ever so right in lots of ways. It's like Job's comforters. Well, they did, they were pests in lots of ways, but at least they were there, weren't they? So I'll give them that. They were there for Job. But they said a lot of things that sounded very right, but in the end, God sided with Job. Right? And so I think when we go with the letter of the law constantly, and we get hammered with that a lot in evangelical circles, don't we? Hammered with the law. And the only kind of love we've known is negative, hammering, shaming kind of, quote, love. Then when we hear the other kind, it sounds artificial or wrong to us, And so that's another thing that we need to be praying about is how can we release the prisoners in the body of Christ who are shackled to shame? I mean, that's leadership on down, How can we shatter this shame syndrome that keeps people thinking that is what God is about finding ways to alienate himself from them because of something wrong that they're feeling or doing, because we can't ever be healed as long as we are in that framework of mind. We can testify to be, yes, we can take giant leaps of faith, as we call it, but we really aren't healed inside until we know that God truly loves us with total commitment and with no conditions, no strings attached. And that is, I think, shame is one of the biggest hindrances to people moving in revelation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
it's the first experience that. Sorry. Carry on, Charlie. Well, I mean, shame was the first experience mankind had, wasn't it? After they ate from the tree, the women we're told at the end of Genesis 2, man and woman were naked and were not ashamed. So every day God has seen them naked. Suddenly, they become aware that they're naked, and although the Bible doesn't use the word ashamed, they are full of shame because they cover it up and they hide from God because they don't want God to see them that way anymore. So shame is almost, I don't think it's sin we inherited from Adam. No. I think it's shame we inherited. We inherited shame, and the sense of shame that makes us hide ourselves and actually cover up the real me.
Profound, deep embarrassment is what shame is.
Yes. And Paul talks about it, doesn't he? In Colossians, he says, once you were alienated in your mind.
Absolutely.
It's not that you were alienated, you were alienated and became his enemy in your mind.
Yeah. So much
because you
so
judged your behavior evil.
Yeah, and so much so that when Abba came into the garden to cover this shame, they couldn't even receive it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've already overdrawn. If you two guys want, we can have a little chat afterwards again. But I would,
Sure.
And over Messenger. But I would say for the video talk we're gonna stop here, and I mean we can even do this again. But if anyone wants to say something, or please feel free, or if you want some prayer or something now, you could jump in, and so we're still trying to figure this out, because we want to get the theme out, the revelation out that we're going to talk about, but we also want you to all be a part of this, and to know that we, as Charlie said, we're no experts. We're just trying to figure this out ourselves, and good. Otherwise, you can just always send one of us a personal message, and just if you want to know more about the topic, or maybe you want to be one of these hangouts, and you want to share something you've been given, and we'll talk about something, how you walk in Abba's love, and how you pass it on, and otherwise we would wrap it up here if no one else wants to join us now, and I would give you two guys a call afterwards.
Okay.
So just don't know if I mentioned that, John, but we record this, so
Yeah.
And so just so everyone is clear, in case you want to come on, that you will be recorded. Okay, let's maybe finish with a prayer, and then I'm gonna wrap it up, and we continue. Okay, Abba, thank you for this time together, and I just ask that everyone who's here, that you would make your presence known to them, that you would make your love known to them.
Yes.
That your voice would become more real to them, that your presence would be more real to them, that your unfailing mercy would become more real to them. And I hope that our stories and what we share today, that it would really inspire faith in everyone who joined us here today. And thank you for our friendship, and thank you for this group and this community that we're still trying to figure out how it works. And bless you all, and I see you two guys later on then, and we see you next time. We're gonna try to do these other calling calls more often, and as I said, if you've got any ideas for how we can make this more interactive, let me know. Send me a personal message. God bless you. Speak to you soon. Bye.